reports of actually men in black in the Old West. The first men in black reported in the 1950s were kind of like almost like ghosts. They had a supernatural connotation. They didn't quite seem human. I found quite a few reports of men in black associated with aerial phenomena back in the Old West as well.
Welcome to High Strangeness, where we ask questions and explore all that is strange and unexpected in our reality.
All right, welcome to High Strangeness, everybody. We today are going to talk about a fun subject. One of my favorite films is actually one called Cowboys and Aliens. I loved it because it made me think about a time in history where if UFOs were around, and they might have and probably were, what would have happened? How would people have responded to them? You know, what were things like back before history of TV, news, different things like that that we rely on today. So we're going to dive into that a little bit, and there's actually a series of books, if you've ever wondered about what might have happened back then. And we're going to talk with one of the authors of those books right now, and his name is John LeMay. John, welcome to the show, my friend. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me, Tony.
This is going to be fun. I think to me, it's just a fun subject, just any of that old stuff. Because it's funny to me when I watched even like the movie, Cowboys and Aliens, like I remember going into the movie and thinking, okay, let's see what this is about. But I loved it. I just loved where it made my mind go in the way I thought about, wow, I wonder what would have happened. Could this have happened back then, right? And so with your series of books, which I think runs from the 1800s to the 1900s, does that sound about right?
Yeah, that's about right.
You look into a number of different things and talk about them. So we'll get into that. I mean, these are books that you've written a while ago, so we're not going to dive like granular into those.
Yeah.
Because it's been a bit for you. But these are great books that people can pick up and read. And so we'll dive in and out, kind of meander through all of this. But, I have a question for you, John. I'm not sure where you're joining us from today, but are you a cowboy?
No, but I do live in Roswell, New Mexico. Believe it or not.
Whoa. That's kind of cool. Do you live there? Is that just where you grew up, or what got you to Roswell, New Mexico?
Believe it or not, I was born here, my parents were born here, and even one of the grandparents was born here, so I'm a third generation Roswellite.
Wow. Do you have like that whole UFO thing in your blood, or are you kind of sick of that out there?
So I grew up, I've been seeing cardboard UFOs and aliens ever since I've been cognizant. So for me, growing up, aliens and UFOs, they just weren't a big deal. Just because I saw them everywhere. I even mowed the lawn of one of the famous witnesses, Robert Shirky, and I didn't even ask him about, his experience. Because again, when you're a kid, you just take it for granted.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's fun because I've only been there once. We were driving, took my whole family. We went to a vacation in Texas, and I'm like, we have to stop here. And the kids were like a little bit younger at the time, and they were like, why, Dad? And I'm like, you'll see. So we got there, and they enjoyed it. It was pretty cool to kind of go through that whole thing and just to say, we have been to Roswell. It was pretty cool.
What year did you pass through?
Oh, boy. Let me see. So it was a while ago because my youngest is 26, and I don't think he was born yet. So,
Okay.
if
Yeah.
he was, he was probably under 4. If he was young. So it was a while ago.
Okay. Well, I encourage you to come back because since you've been here, they really redid our UFO museum where it's a totally different experience. It has like a VR simulated crash
Ooh.
UFO you can like not ride in, but you know how VR rides are, and it's got
Yeah.
like a big replica of Gort from the day the Earth stood still. So that museum has really expanded quite a bit since you've been here
Wow.
last.
Excuse me. That's pretty cool. Do you guys still see quite a few people come out for that? Tourists and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, and of course, like with anything, it's the anniversary years that end in either a 0 or a 5 that are the big draws. But depending on how much of a cultural touchstone Disclosure Day may or may not be,
Hmm.
that might get us some more visitors this summer.
Yeah. Well, I mean, come on. They have to finally admit to this. Like we
Yeah.
all know it happened there, and I don't know. We'll see what happens. And what you're bringing up right now makes a lot of sense. I think it's fun and interesting to watch history right now. It could be a big bust. We'll see. But I mean, I know it's not the only time it kind of bubbled up in history, but it feels more real now. Feels like something might happen. So I don't know. I'm pretty excited about it. And yeah, it might drive a whole new group of people coming down there
Yeah.
to Roswell for sure. Yeah. So, bringing up cowboys and stuff like that, it's funny. It's like a friend of mine who does a lot of hiking and he goes a lot, he explores a lot. I love it, but I love it vicariously through him.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Like, it's like cowboys for me. Yellowstone, Dutton Ranch. Yeah, that's about all I know about cowboying. But I do like to think about the past and what has happened there. So let's get into some of this. I'm going to ask some questions and we'll just go wherever we're going to go with this. I do want to kind of look at some of your books as well and the things that you've talked about in there. But my first question is, if you could read one UFO case, or if I could read one UFO case from the American frontier, what would be a good one for me to read?
Well, I won't say Aurora, even though it's the most documented, just because you probably read that one.
Mhm.
I think my favorite that really got me was one that was technically only published as a young girl's dream in 1896. She wrote a letter to the paper about this weird dream she had about the little men who came and took her in their ship and they flew her around the moon. And, again, back in the late 1800s, there was no public conception of what we now know as the alien grays. And you really don't see that a lot in the old Western UFO accounts. So seeing that, even though it was a dream, because a lot of people, depending on how traumatic they are, think their abduction experiences are a dream. That case really intrigued me, and it's from I think 1898 or so, where it was
Mm.
after the big airship wave, and it really sounded like she was describing the Greys taking her for a ride to the moon.
Yeah. Well, and it makes you wonder how many times maybe that did happen. Because even
Yeah.
today, we have people that kind of suppress that. And then I interviewed somebody just earlier this year. For 50 years, they suppressed it and wouldn't even talk about it. And finally, they were like, you know what? I can't hold this in anymore.
Yeah.
So you wonder back then in the Old West and things like that, like, who were you going to tell? Right?
hmm
Yeah.
And that is tough because it's a traumatic experience for people, and they can't talk about it for fear of ridicule, but they need
Yeah.
to.
They do. I mean, they really do. And to your point, when I talk to people who are finally opening up about stuff, it's like such a sense of relief for them to be able to do that. It's crazy. Well, okay. People think, I mean, if they're into this, right, they know some of the history. But so many people think it's a new thing. I've had a lot of people say to me casually in my circle of friends, well, I mean, maybe it's just tech because I'm sure they have stuff we don't know about. And I'm like, well, that's probably true, but what about the stuff from 50, 80, 100, 300, 500 years ago? They're like, what do you mean? There's stuff from back then? Right? So a lot of people think, even if they're aware of UFOs, 1947 is when it all started. That's what they think. But you know differently, don't you?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Tell us a little bit about what you think people might not know about going back past that point, 1947, way back.
So, I know we're here to talk about the Cowboys and Aliens series that my friend Noah Torres and I have done, but we also did a follow-up series that goes into the early 1900s as well, with UFO sightings from the 19 teens and 20s and 30s. And I feel like the discs, the more disc-shaped crafts, those started to appear in the early 1900s. But when we go back to the Old West and the frontier, the disc-shaped craft were fairly rare, and they were usually more like dirigible airship type things. Although some of them, as opposed to dirigibles, they probably are a closer match with the cigar-shaped UFOs that a lot of people have seen. But
Interesting.
there were a lot of reports. What muddies the water, though, is that newspaper men back in the 1800s, it was totally okay for them to make up fictional stories and publish them without ever running a redaction that, oh, yesterday's story was made up. And I do believe that there were UFOs and UAPs and, flying saucer, extraterrestrial craft, back during the Wild West. But I don't believe every single article that I read about it. That's for
Mm.
sure.
That's a good point to make up, right? Because you see, there's an expectation, not currently, because I don't think this is true anymore in media, but if you go back 20 years ago and for a while before that, they really had some integrity about trying to make sure that what they were reporting was factual and truthful. Where, of course, today it's more, just to get the clicks, I think, and to just rev up people. But it sounds like before that point, there was a bit of storytelling.
Yeah, so what kind of ruined me for that is I wrote a whole biography on a newspaper man from here in Roswell who wrote the first book ever on Billy the Kid.
Mm.
And I read his personal letters and then also his articles and would compare them, and I could see his sense of humor in his personal letters come out in his articles. And his name was Ash Upson. He was atypical, I think, of Western newspaper men on the frontier. And I think a lot of them like to make stuff up, and they would include their friends in the stories, so that way their friends could read the story in the paper and laugh about it. And but then today, 100 years from now, we read these and we're like, "Oh, that person was real," But it doesn't mean the story is true. But again, I do want to reiterate, I do believe there were UFOs in the Old West, but I also like to be objective because
Yeah.
people won't believe you if you're not objective and you just believe everything and push everything. So again, I believe there were UFOs back then for sure. But amongst all these articles that I found, I would guess maybe like half of them might be true.
Hmm.
Would be my that would be my best guess.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because that means for you in your research, you were not just doing UFO research, you were being a historian, you were being a researcher, all of those things just to kind of vet the story. That's interesting.
Yeah, so the great thing about Roswell, I wanted to mention, it really could be the best Cowboys and Aliens town ever because we have a lot of Western folk heroes who lived here. Like Billy the Kid came through Roswell a lot. The sheriff who killed him, Pat Garrett, lived here. There was the cattle baron John Chisholm from the John Wayne movie from 1970. He lived here in Roswell. So we have a history very steeped in, cowboys and aliens and UFOs. But I regret to say I've never been able to find a story about Billy the Kid or Pat Garrett or somebody seeing an airship or even a ball of fire. I
Right.
wish I would find one, but I haven't yet.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. All right. I've got a question for you. If you were a rancher back in the 1890s and you saw, I don't know, a glowing craft in the sky, um, what, putting yourself back in that time with the way people were, what do you think you would have done? And maybe that represents what maybe average people back then might have done.
I think anyone back then would have to have interpreted it religiously. And that's why Noe and I, when we would come across stories about, they called them signs and wonders in the sky, typically those did correlate with UFO activity. And actually, I think the quote unquote signs and wonders stories, those are the ones that I tend to think are true and were real UFO encounters. So I think, yeah, if I was a rancher back in the 1800s, I would think of it as a heavenly sign and wonder, or something like Ezekiel's wheels or something like that.
Yeah, yeah, of course. I mean, some people have said that UFOs represent the common group thought of the time. Like if you expect to see saucers after, the 1940s when it started being seen, that's what people see. However, today you don't see those. You see more. I
Hmm.
mean, you do, but you do see more of the triangles and the orbs and stuff. So that is interesting. And some people, kind of suspect that maybe this phenomena has the ability to represent itself the way we expect to see it too, which is a whole weird other thing to think about.
Yeah.
Well, when I don't know, when I think about the Old West in that time, it's too bad we don't have a better way to capture, what really happened, right? Like I wish somebody would have dropped a nice video recorder
Yeah.
or kind of some kind of a recorder back then, because the thing is, those people, they're not like us today with our heads in our phone and sitting in the house watching TV. These people were out there probably, who knows what they were seeing all the time, looking up at the sky. Yeah. I want to know a little bit about the Aurora, Texas airship. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, that's absolutely the Roswell incident of the Old West. For whatever reason, it's the most famous one. It's the one that caught on. But throughout 1896 and 1897, they had a whole wave of airship sightings. And it was just Aurora was, again, the one that caught the most media attention, and also the one that was resurrected above all the others. So typically, the airship wave of 1896 to 97, usually it was just a sighting of kind of a futuristic craft that people couldn't comprehend. But Aurora was different because it actually crashed. They saw it crash, and then again, similar to Roswell, they claimed that they found an alien body. Unfortunately, they really didn't describe it. I think they just said it was a Martian, because back then anything from another planet would always be a Martian back then, typically. And they buried the pilot, or what they called the pilot of the craft, and it even had a headstone in the cemetery. And it's naturally, this headstone got stolen a long time ago, but they say that on the headstone they etched like a crude depiction of the craft that crashed on it. And then it's one of the few UFO cases to actually have a official state historic marker. And we have one here in New Mexico too for the Socorro UFO encounter of like 64 or whenever that was. But Aurora, Texas, 1897. That's one of the only other ones that we're aware of where they have an actual official state marker for this UFO incident.
Hmm. As you looked into some of this, is there even any thought of where this might be today? Like that burial place?
Sure. So I mean, hypothetically, if this really happened and an alien being was buried, then the government would know about it. They would absolutely dig it up. They'd have a story for it. And probably the best ancillary evidence for Aurora is they had this well. They supposedly chucked some of the debris into a well, and then the people that drank from the well developed some weird maladies and sicknesses and stuff. And
Mm.
so that gives it some credence for sure.
Yeah. Think about what you just said. Who in the world throws debris in their well?
Yeah, that's another thing that kind of troubles me. It's like, well, why would you do that?
Yeah, that
Um,
is really crazy. But hey,
yeah.
certain parts of the world, my brother spent some time in the Philippines when he was in his 20s, and he was out not in the main cities, and he would see these people come out and just drop and go to the bathroom right there on the side of the road, right in front of their house. And this is what they would do a lot of times. And I thought, but the same thing. Why would you do that?
Yeah.
Well, people do things. Who knows?
Yeah.
So let's weave in and out of some of this. So the first book, Early American UFOs, 1800 to 1864, The Real Cowboys and Aliens. When somebody looks at this book, like what was your favorite part about that book? Was there anything that really stuck out to you that was kind of fun when you were putting that one together?
I remember on that one, there's actually a letter to Thomas Jefferson, or no, maybe it was Benjamin Franklin. Who was it? Yeah, it was Ben. Okay, it was Benjamin Franklin. Someone wrote a letter to him, I think, describing this weird thing they saw in the sky. No, it was Thomas Jefferson. So I should explain to listeners. I wrote this book, I don't know how many years ago, and I've probably done 20 books since then. So
Hmm.
all my hard drive in my brain is completely full. I can't retain anything. Knowing I really did write the book, I just can't remember my own book at this point is the problem.
Yeah.
At least not the specifics. But yeah, it was somebody wrote a letter to either Benjamin Franklin or Thomas Jefferson about this odd flying object that they could only liken to a turtle. And it kind of sounded like Gamera, the flying turtle monster from Japan. That was kind of what stuck out to me. But
That's
yeah,
pretty
well, let's
interesting.
see here. What year was that? So this would have been 1813. That they got this letter about this odd thing flying in the sky that looked kind of like a turtle. And there was a lot of interesting phenomena associated with meteor showers, where they would find weird residue on the ground after these meteor showers, which I remember researching. That was really interesting.
That is.
And oh, this okay, it's all coming back to me now. Something else Noe and I really were intrigued by were reports of actually men in black in the Old West.
Whoa.
Because, anyone who knows anything about ufology for real, they know that men in black aren't quite like in the movie franchise. They're very different. The first Men in Black reported in the 1950s were kind of like almost like ghosts. They had a supernatural connotation. They didn't quite seem human. So
Hmm.
Noe and I found quite a few reports of men in black associated with aerial phenomena back in the Old West as well.
Hi, did you know High Strangeness may be looking for you? Have you ever seen something or experienced something strange? If so, I want to know. Go to this website or email me here. Thanks, and let's get back to the show. Now that is interesting.
Yeah,
Way back then. So they didn't come in the black car. They must have come in something else, right?
yeah. But yeah, I don't think you know this, but since you mentioned the movie Cowboys and Aliens, Noe and I's first pass at this whole topic is this kind of tiny rudimentary book we wrote for kids. So when Cowboys and Aliens was coming out in 2011, Noe and I both had the same epiphany that, well, there's the Aurora UFO crash and there's a few others. So let's write a book about it. But since there wasn't really enough material, we thought, well, let's just make it a book for kids.
Hmm.
Or when I say kids, I mean like, let's say 10 to 14 or so. So again, people watching this is the first book, really thin. What that first book blew up into, though, are these three books here, which and what happened between 2011 and I think 2019 when we started doing these again was they finally had digitized all these old newspapers. And so Noe and I both had our own respective memberships to like newspaper.com and Newspaper Archive, and we both just started searching for airship and terms they would have used back then, and we just found again like so many cases,
Wow.
enough for three sizable books. And then after we finished those, we found a bunch of stuff we missed, and we had to do two more that we call the lost cases.
I love that. And I bet you were like, yay, we didn't have to go to um, libraries and microfiche
Yeah.
and all that stuff, right?
Yeah, I really respect Jerome Clark. I've never met him, but I mean, I know when Jerome Clark did this, he had to do the microfiche and then transcribe it, arduously by hand. Noe and I are spoiled. You can do an OCR to, take because we like to reprint the articles verbatim so you can read them for yourself and judge them. And so yeah, it was fun. It's kind of like panning for gold,
Right. Yeah.
just looking through these old articles.
Well, John, as we're talking, tell us a little bit about you and Noe. Did I say that right?
Yeah,
No or
Noe.
Noe?
Noe is
Noe.
correct.
Okay. Could you tell us a little bit about you guys and how did you guys kind of combine for this kind of a project?
Yeah, Noe is such a nice man. He's a ufologist in Texas. It's also a librarian, but he retired recently. And Noe, is really he's more the UFO guy than me. I'm more into folklore, and I just enjoy writing books. And how he and I connected was Noe wrote this really unique guidebook to the Roswell UFO incident. And when I say guidebook, I mean it's a guidebook to take you around town and show you different places where, like where Mac Brazel got interviewed at KGFL, the radio station, or where the original base hospital was. And so when he was writing this book, he asked if I would write a historical afterword for him. And I did. And so we connected through that. And he came to Roswell and we met each other in person. And he would come back every so often for the UFO festivals. I remember one year we went out to the actual crash site in Corona together.
Hmm.
So we got to see it in person. That was fun. But yeah, I had written a UFO book. It's called Roswell USA, which was kind of about like the cultural impact of Roswell and how it inspired other towns to promote their weird histories. And I couldn't find a publisher for it. And Noe said, "Well, I'll publish it for you. I know how to self-publish." And so he did that for me. And I think it was just a year later when Cowboys and Aliens, the movie, was coming out, and we both had that idea, and so we thought, well, let's just co-write a book together. And so we've had a great partnership for, I guess it'd be 15, no, 15, 16 years now.
Wow. That's great stuff. I love hearing those
Yeah.
stories of how people get together and create and stuff like that. So that's great. So he's an older gentleman now. You're saying he's retired and stuff. And
Yeah. He's probably about my parents' age, so
yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
I don't know if he'd like me calling him an older gentleman, so he's my parents' age. That's what I'll say.
yeah. That's funny. Well, I'm going to ask you more questions about some of these other things, but I'm curious, when we talk about all of this, one of the things that I think is interesting is the Native American people who really have not ever shied away from, some of these claims about people coming from the stars, the star people, and that sort of thing. In any of this work that you've done, did you guys get a chance to look at any of that and to see, maybe some of their stories and what they've done?
Yes, I don't remember if we turned up any heretofore undiscovered articles. I think Jerome Clark is the one who found a lot of these though, and one of them was about Bigfoot. I believe because there's a connection between Bigfoot and UFOs often,
Hmm.
and it's a story about a Native American tribe. I've already forgotten where in the country this was, but they claimed that people would come from the sky in what they called a small moon, or what they mean to
Mm.
say is like a glowing white orb. And they said these glowing white orbs would land, and out of them would come these hairy creatures that looked like men, which is, obviously Bigfoot. And I think they called them crazy bears, was their
Mm.
name for them.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, the one that sticks out to me is just that that they had a Native American tribe that associated Bigfoot with the stars. And yeah, living here in New Mexico, there's a lot of unique stories about like UFO connections to Chaco Canyon here and things of that nature. So yeah, the indigenous peoples really didn't have a hard time believing in like beings from the sky at
Yeah.
all.
What I love about it is things kind of circle around, right? We've got Native American peoples who said things like like that about Bigfoot, and then also portals and stuff like that.
Hmm.
And only now, scientifically, or at least if you look at like Skinwalker Ranch and what they're doing, they're really showing that there's something to this.
Yeah.
And I just love how science and scientists often shun other things away that don't fit into this box that they have, and then when they're forced to break free from that, it's like, well, look, there may actually be some. Well, why didn't we go
Yeah.
back and listen to the Native American people who've been saying it forever, right? And I laugh about that because I feel like that's the same thing with Sasquatch too, because there's evidence that these beings can either be interdimensional or, I mean, there's things that they can do that just do not make sense for a flesh and blood animal. So, yeah, I don't
And
know.
Bigfoot, yeah, that's very similar to these Old West UFO stories, just in the sense that if Bigfoot has always been around, naturally they would have seen, the Sasquatch back then, and they did. There's a lot of newspaper accounts of hairy wild men that really fit what we would today call Bigfoot.
Right. Yeah. I'm telling you, if we could only go back, right? And we have to do it through the books. That's how we do it. Let's talk a minute about Old West UFOs, 1865 to 1895, Real Cowboys and Aliens. That book there, it looks like you had probably 30 chapters in there. All kinds of things, ball of fire to flying coffin and just a
Yep.
mothership over New Jersey, all kinds of things. Share anything about that book that remains fresh in your mind, which once again, telling everybody out there listening, these are books that were written a while ago.
Yeah.
And John was a good sport to hop on here, even though it's been a bit of time. So,
So my favorite cases, I like to get into cryptozoology and monsters and stuff like that. So one of my favorites that we've got in the book is a sighting of what people in England called spring-heeled Jack back in I think it was the 1830s. He was this, for lack of a better word, like a 1950s sci-fi B-movie alien that they really claimed to see back in the 1830s in London, and a pretty much identical being was spotted in Kentucky, and it was also spotted piloting a type of UFO. So we thought that was quite the interesting story. I get tired of the same old airship UFO stories, so I like the weirder stuff.
mhm.
And this is one that I think I don't remember if I found this or if this was another one that I just found from Jerome Clark, but there was a story about a meteor crashing to Earth, and in the meteor, in the debris, they found a sword. They found a
What?
giant sword. Again, we at this point we can't say if they just made these stories up or if this
Mhm.
really happened. But that one stuck out for me. They found a sword amidst this meteor debris.
That's
Um,
crazy.
okay, one that I really like. We've got the Pascagoula UFO incident of 1973, or was it 74? 70
Mm,
something, right?
70 something. Yeah, early 70s. Yeah.
So what I thought was so cool is we found a Pascagoula UFO incident from the 1870s, almost like 100 years ago to the day, or maybe not to the
Mm.
day, but just 100 years ago. They had a documented UFO incident in Pascagoula, and same thing. They had some UFO activity where today we think Area 51 is.
Interesting. Love that.
Yeah, I'm also a big fan of the Crawfordsville Monster of 1891 because it's definitely not really a UFO. It was just a strange flying creature that was kind of hard to describe. And cryptozoologists and Fordians, they think it's something called an atmospheric beast. I
Hmm.
think that's what they call them, atmospheric beasts. And if you've seen the movie Nope, um,
Yes. Yes.
recently, is same thing. It's a living organism that maybe you mistake for a UFO, and so that one is another one that really intrigues me.
John, that's funny that you bring up that movie because it is one that when I went in to watch that movie, I didn't know what to expect. And I
Hmm.
actually left the movie not happy because it went against like what you think a
Hmm.
UFO is. But it's funny because as I've thought about it since then, I go, wait a minute. Like, why not? I mean, there's this vast space up there in the atmosphere. Like, there could be all kinds of things up there. How would we even know? Hence, those orbs that have weird shapes and those things that now are being seen. Maybe they live there, right?
Yeah,
Very interesting. Yeah.
I thought it was scary. Like,
Yeah.
I don't really get too scared in movies, but I actually thought Nope was pretty scary and unsettling, so I liked it.
Yeah, it definitely. You know, you definitely didn't want to be out there by where they were for
Yeah.
that. What do you think, as you look at people and have met people over time? I'm sure some discussion has come up here and there about historical UAP, UFOs. What do you think generally is the biggest misconception that people have about UFOs going back, way back, like at that time? Do you think they even think it happened or no?
I think most people are just too afraid to speak their mind. They're afraid of being made fun of. So there's probably a decent amount that do believe in all of this, but they're just too afraid to say it.
Yeah,
That's what I think. Yeah, they're skeptical maybe because they're a little bit prideful.
right, right. It's interesting. Along with that, I've met people that have, I'm going to call them sort of religious constraints a little bit, because it's not something for many religions that really is even something you should think about, right? It's kind of like no, no,
Yeah, it
and
doesn't really
so
fit into that narrative, so it's hard for people to know how to deal with it.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I've had some people that are very religious who've talked to me who were like relieved to have somebody who would accept what they're going to say, would not be judgmental, and that's a hard place for some people to be. But you're right. Like people create these things or have that created for them where they feel like they can't really um, accept the things that they think they saw or whatever. It's crazy. Yeah.
Oh, and I guess another thing to that effect I will put out there is I think some people get really attached to their theories. And I think some people really like the theory that we didn't have alien visitors until the atomic bomb tests,
Right.
which, I mean, I get it. And I do think that the atomic bomb tests concentrated a lot of activity where I live because Roswell's very, relatively speaking, it's very near the Trinity site. So I do think there are people out there who they like their theory that, UFOs didn't really come here until the atomic blast. But I mean, if UFOs have the ability to travel here, why wouldn't they have been here from day one checking things out?
Yeah. That's exactly right. Well, and here's the interesting thing is, do you know who Jacques Vallée is?
Yeah, he's very nice. I think he read one of Noe and I's books, if I remember
Oh,
right, and was
nice.
nice enough to. Was it him? I think he. I feel like he gave us a review quote once, and he was really gracious to us both, if I remember right.
Yeah. No, that's so cool. That is great because he definitely has been a little more open about some of the thoughts he has, and it is very different than the standard thoughts about what UFOs are and the nature of all of this. It just goes beyond what people have been thinking, and I love that.
I think I align with him and John Keel because they're kind of on the same wavelength of these extra or ultra terrestrials
Hmm.
and that okay, well that is something we did write about in early American UFOs. We talked about the similarities between fairy encounters of where people
Yeah.
they would encounter the little people, they would have missing time and maybe kind of sexual experiences, akin to alien abductions now. So that is
Mm.
something that we do write about in early American UFOs.
I love that. Yeah, you're right. I mean, there's those types of things in history. Where did they come from? I mean, other parts of the world too, right? Like they talk about
Yeah.
those things, and what is the origin of some of that? And maybe it's variations of the same thing, just described differently. Yeah. John, when you've done the research on these, and now you showed just 5 books right there alone, 5 or 6. Was there anything that you can remember that you found that you thought to yourself, you couldn't verify it, but man, you wish this was true?
Yeah, I was raised on old sci-fi movies, so in a weird way, there's a lot of them that I do wish were true or want to be true. I think I feel that way about all of them to a degree, except for there was one, and Kevin Randall dug this one up for his book on UFO crashes a long time ago, and it can't possibly be true. It's about these pink aliens that crashed, I think in Kalamazoo, Michigan or something,
Hmm.
and they wore togas like the Romans, and you could just kind of tell it was this was definitely a satirical story. This couldn't even possibly be true. So I think that's the only one I've ever read where I'm like, oh, that's not true.
Somebody was smoking something.
Yeah. But you know what though? Again, it all comes back to me the more we talk about this. There was a couple of Old West cases that seem to be describing the Nordics or the tall. What do you call them? The tall
Yeah, the
Nordics or
tall
just the
whites, the
Nordics? The
Nordics.
tall
Yeah.
whites. Yeah. There's
Wow.
definitely a few of those types of encounters we found.
That's interesting. Okay,
Hmm.
this is this is going to lead me to my next question, actually, because I was curious if you saw any common threads, either amongst things claimed back at that time, or any that transcend into our current time, that you could say that's the same thing here and now as they saw there, or maybe during that time they were seeing a lot of this, whatever that was.
Finding common threads is my favorite thing to do, regardless of what I'm writing about. Like I wrote a book about La Llorona, the Wailing Woman, and I found they have kind of like La Llorona types all over the world, which I think is fascinating. So I love to find these dots and connect them, and it's kind of like being a cold case detective or something. But with the Old West UFOs, again, the big one for me was the first one I spoke about when you asked me what my favorite case was. And I said it was the little girl who had the dream about the little people, and it just sounded so much like what we would call the Greys.
Yeah.
And again, it was odd. It's a little odd. We really don't see many accounts of the Greys in these stories, compared to now. And so maybe the Greys didn't really hang around here all that often until the atomic tests. That could be.
Yeah, we'll never know, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. The book, The Coming of the Airships, 1896 to 1899, Real Cowboys and Aliens. What in that one kind of stood out to you? I mean, I noticed in some of your chapters you mentioned Edison, Tesla, um, stole my cow,
Yeah.
government stuff, excuse me, and just different things like that in that book. Anything stood out that you can recall in
Oh
that
yeah.
book? Yeah.
So unfortunately, the UFOs stole my cow. Noe and I were really excited about that one because it
Hmm.
sounded like, a cattle mutilation in the Old West, which would really make sense. But that was one of the ones I think he and I agreed for sure, for sure. There was something in there that kind of debunked that one,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
Yeah.
But yeah, these airship stories. So typically, our first book, Early American UFOs, that covered 1800 to 1864. 64 whole years.
Hmm.
Second book covered about 30 years, 1865 to 95. But you know, Coming of the Airships is a whole book just for 1896 to 1899 because there was that much activity.
Right.
And so there again, you have to wonder: was there really a flap of, UFO sightings, or did all of these newspaper men just hop on the same bandwagon and make up stories? I would guess a sizable amount of them were real, and then occasionally a newspaper man would read a story and decide to do their own version of it. And that was something I did discover would happen because I did a similar book to this called Cowboys and Saurians, which is basically about cryptid articles from the Old West. And I did find an instance where a newspaper writer on the West Coast copied a story from the East Coast verbatim and just changed the locations and thought nobody would ever notice. So
Yeah.
it is possible some of these guys would read articles from other papers and say, well, I'm going to do my own version of that. One story that really stuck out to me as what I would assume to be propaganda was when the Spanish American War was heating up, because they started running stories about people encountering airships, and in this case, they really weren't like aliens, they were humans. It would be humans piloting dirigibles that would land, And Farmer Bob or whoever would talk to the pilot, and they would always say that they were going off to aid in the Spanish-American War.
Hmm.
And so those ones I think were an example of early day propaganda of the media trying to sway public opinion in support of getting in on that war. So I thought that was interesting.
That is, and oh my gosh, they started that back then, huh?
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, this isn't really UFO related, but I know the media jumped the gun when there was a ship that blew up in the harbor, and in Cuba, like a U.S. ship, and they reported that it was the Spanish that attacked them. And again, they jumped the gun, but they got the American people so riled up that the president at the time felt like we had to join the war. So
Right.
I just learned that media manipulation was happening, all the way back then as well.
Amazing. Boy, some things work so good, they just keep using it. Okay, here's a little bit of a different question, John. If a modern UFO researcher could travel back to the 1880s with today's technology, or some of it, right? Like some of the recording devices and stuff, what would you say, based on the things you've looked at and stuff, would be a good hotspot for that person to go to have the highest chance of finding something?
I'd have to look and see between 1896 and 97 which area had the highest frequency of airship sightings, and it might have been California. I feel like they had a lot of sightings, or at least they had a lot of articles.
Hmm.
So maybe, California 1896 or 97.
Well, there was the Battle of L.A.
Yeah.
that happened, of course, much later, but there's things that happen there. And I think actually that California is one of the places with higher sightings in the country as well.
Yeah.
Florida being one, and a few other places. But yeah, why not? Why not make that the place? Okay, I want to talk for a minute about, you have the book Lost UFO Cases of the Old West. I know these are the ones that didn't make it into the first. Was when you came up with this book here, was it a matter of other accounts didn't fit well, or did you just find them ongoing afterwards and say, "Oh, look, we have
Exactly.
these
We
too"?
just found them.
Yeah.
Yeah, we just found them too late afterwards, and they were really great stories. And then some of them, I mean, let's be honest, are a little more tangential. Like, I think we have a chapter in here on Ambrose Bierce, who wrote the disappearing into the field story, and he himself, like disappeared in Mexico, I think around 1913. And some of them we allowed ourselves finally to write about hoax, like we wrote about the Great Moon Hoax of 1835.
Hmm.
But yeah, it was, and I think this is the book also where I have the chapter on the Spanish-American War connection. We found some reports of a planned Confederate Air Force from the Civil War where they were drawing up plans for airships. So yeah, it's basically like if you really love the first three books and you want another one, this is just more cool stuff that we found. And then we did it again. We have also Lost UFO Cases of the Old West. Honestly, I think we titled these books a little too similarly to where people get
Hmm.
confused. So we have two Lost Cases books, actually. Again, where we just keep finding these cases, and we'll probably find more, as more newspapers are digitized. And
Do you think that there's a good number of these that have been digitized, these papers, or do you think there's still tons more that they have not got to yet?
I would think most of them have been done, but that's tough to say. That's kind of out of my wheelhouse. Even though I look at them all the time, I'm not sure. It doesn't seem like I'm ever lacking though when I search a certain year. They usually turn up pretty easily.
Yeah.
Ironically, one newspaper you won't find on newspapers.com is the 1947 Roswell Daily Record issue, and it's not like for government cover-up reasons. It's just oddly and ironically enough, that's one of the ones that hasn't really been digitized.
That's interesting. Yeah, that is interesting. All right, here's a question. With all of the research and the things that you've done for these books, you and Noe, Is there one, either one of you, or that you can recall that you were like, this one is impossible to dismiss? Like, this is so rock solid with what we've seen that we, are as sure as we could ever be. This is something that happened.
Well, I think with those old ones, that's too difficult to say. But Noe, I hope you get to have him on here one day because he's
Mhm.
investigated things like from our time. So he, I think, will probably have several where he could say, "Yeah, I for sure would stake everything that this actually happened." And he's
Yeah.
written some really great, UFO books that are out of the norm. Like I think he has one on a Laredo, Texas UFO crash. I think gosh, he has. I can't remember the titles of Noe's books that he's done on his own, but I would just type in Noe, which is Noe, Noe Torres, and check
Hmm.
out some of his solo books and also books that he's done with Ruben Uriarte of Mexico, because they're probably like some of the best, or maybe even like the best, like UFO researchers relating to Mexico and the border.
Wow. Yeah, that's good. For everybody watching, I'll have the pictures of the books here throughout the episode so they can see those names and stuff. What, you know, what got you into this, John? I mean, you live right there in uh, Roswell, which most people would say, hello, that's it right there.
Yeah.
But for you, like, what would you say was that thing that said, I want to look into these things. I want to write about these things.
Boy, I've been a bookworm since I was a little kid. I love going to the library. Especially, I enjoyed the books of Daniel Cohen. He was a paranormal author for kids, and I think they probably had the biggest impact on me. I loved their books. I still have some of their books. And then, eventually I graduated up to like Lauren Coleman and, Tom Carey and Don Schmidt. So I've always been interested in paranormal topics. And again, I just like books. So therefore I love to make books. So, and I also do the layout. So so I don't design the covers for these things. These covers come from a great artist named Jolien Yates.
Hmm.
So you can see on this one, he did the Aurora UFO crash where they're having the funeral for the alien. But that's the fun part with me when I do self-publish is you can tell your artist, hey, I'd really like this on the cover, and
Yeah.
then I do the interiors. I love doing interior book design work. That's something else I actually do on the side for people if they have a minor project. I'll usually lay it out for them for a small fee. But I just love the art of book design and uh, writing, and I have so many projects started. I'll probably never finish all of them before I die because I've just got so many.
That's amazing. I want to get into your how people can connect with you and stuff like that. But first, as we're getting towards the end of the hour here, I was wondering if there's anything else that you wanted to say about just this time period, like this whole, group of books that you wrote about and just all of that. Like you may have some really fond thoughts about that maybe you want to share. Is there anything like that that you'd like to tell the listeners?
Yes, again, I'd say it's just a blending of two of my great loves because living in Roswell, I have quite an appreciation for the Wild West because of Billy the Kid and all that. And then, so it is like a way of combining the Wild West with aliens and UFOs, which is obviously not something most people would think to do. And I guess that's the other thing. I like to write about things that other people don't. I don't really want to write a book that someone else has already written, so to speak.
Hmm.
So that's probably where my enjoyment comes from, and it's just a niche area of the Wild West that people don't know about.
Yeah, I agree. Like I said, that's why I just love thinking about it. And it took a movie really for me to do that. Um, and these books are right up that alley. So that sounds great. I really appreciate you being on today with me.
I
And
appreciate you having me. This is how authors like me actually, earn a living is when we're on your shows, people, they meet us through your shows. So I appreciate you and I thank you.
absolutely. Um, as we kind of close it down here, where can people follow your work? I know you've written a number of books. How can people see that the work that you've done, follow you, purchase your books, and all that stuff.
Well, thank you. I'm not a huge social media person. I don't just love doing that. You kind of have to do that to keep yourself in the public eye. So I call it almost content pollution where you make too many videos, but I've started doing it too where I just, for other people who are into books, I'll just show this is the book I got in the mail today. You know, so I'm not big on like my social media really, but in terms of just finding all of my books, I do make the best royalties through Amazon. They pay good money. They're always on time. So I would just type my name in on Amazon. You're going to get a lot of books because I don't just do UFOs and cryptids. I also do film histories and a little bit of fiction. So, but yeah, just type in my name. My Amazon author page will pop up, and you'll see everything I've got on there.
That sounds great. Yeah, everybody, check out John LeMay. And you know what? Like you were saying, there's other things you do. Maybe there's other things in there that they may find really interesting that they want to hop in there and pick up that book for. That sounds great. John, thanks again so much for being on the show today. For everybody else out there, thank you very much. And hey, Cowboys and Aliens or UFOs in the Old West, it's all a real thing. Read up on it. And hey, I think the more we find out about what has happened in the past, we appreciate more what's going on now. And great authors like this who do share that information and do all the work, really, to get us that good information because we're busy and time's tight. It does a wonderful thing for us to let us dip into a time when I think it probably was pretty special and scary for those people when they saw some of these things. So everybody out there then, thank you. And remember, there's a lot of strange and unexpected in our reality. So always keep your eyes, ears, and minds open. And until next time, stay safe. Hi, we need your help to get bigger and better. How? All you have to do is just like and subscribe. It's free and it just takes a few seconds. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to High Strangeness. This was a glance at some of the strange that exists in our reality.